be screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of, What If Ichigo Enters Dannyphantom? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of HauntedScythe on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Team Phantom had finally a day off. No school. No ghosts. No obligations. But instead of having a fun and movie day at the Manson residence, they were meditating in the park. Though Tucker was against it, he still followed his best friends. Sam wanted her friends to come closer to their own self, so she brought up this idea. She had expected Danny to be against it just like Tucker, but was surprised when he welcomed the idea. His friends had noticed that lately Danny had been pretty stressed. His daily routine was already stressful, but lately, in addition to school, ghost hunting and Sam's social work, he had been plagued with horrible nightmares that wiped away the few hours of sleep he got anyway. The three of them sat under a tree. Sam was fidgety because of the cold autumn wind. Tucker was absolute unnerved and shifted from one side to another. Danny on the other hand was sitting there cross-legged in complete trance. His eyes were dimmed and empty. Sam noticed her crush acting different and tried to wake him, but to no avail. Her heart sank as she noticed that he wasn't breathing. "Tucker, something's wrong with Danny. He isn't breathing," she yelled in pure horror. Tucker jumped up and ran to his friend, placing a hand before his mouth before he remembered something. "Sam. Danny doesn't need oxygen anymore since he became a half-ghost, or did you forget that?" he whispered so that no one could hear him. "I know that, Tucker, but he always breathed despite not needing it, and now he is not. Even his skin is cold as ice," she hissed back. That actually caught her friend's attention, and he touched Danny's arm only to recoil. He had felt that cold before, and horror crept into his mind. No, that can't be." He tried to make it reasonable in his mind. "What?" Sam hissed in barely suppressed anger. "This isn't some usual cold, this is the same cold feeling of a dead man," Tucker whispered with horror-filled eyes. He had once seen a corpse and had touched it back when he visited his uncle who worked at a morgue. Sam's eyes grew big like dinner plates and her eyes flew in between her two friends. She tried to understand what her dark-skinned friend had just told her, but it was just not possible. Danny was cold like a dead man. But that couldn't be. He couldn't die. Not him. Not her Danny. "No, that can't be," she whispered as she laid him down into her lap and stared down into his eyes. There was nothing. No glinting, no sparks, nothing. They were empty, and his pupils were dilated so far that there nearly no blue color left. Tears began to well up in her eyes and fell without a care in the world down her cheeks. Suddenly the supposed corpse jolted upwards into a sitting position and inhaled sharply. His dull eyes cleared and regained their usual blue shine. "DMN, not again," he sighed and jumped up. "Danny?" Sam asked, unsure, while Tucker stood there like frozen. But Danny ignored her and looked into the distance while touching his chest as if he was missing something. "Why can't it be just over?" he thought, tired. "Danny?" Sam asked a bit louder but still unsure. "Yeah?" he asked without turning around. "Are you all right?" She tried to get her confidence back. "Why do you ask?" "I just slept a bit," he stated, bored. "You slept?" "Dude, you were dead," Tucker stated in disbelief. "I don't know what you are talking about." "I am dead. I have been for 3 years now." "What's suddenly so surprising about it?" he asked, bored, still not bothering to turn around. Sam felt hurt from her boyfriend's word. It was like he didn't care about them or his life at all. She stood up and walked up to him. This was different, Danny. You were really dead, she tried to reason and laid a hand on his shoulder. Leave me alone, Sam. It was nothing. I was just tired. He shrugged her hand off a bit too violent and walked away. Sam looked at his retreating form with a teary and hurt look while Tucker stared at him in sheer disbelief. Danny, how could you do this to Sam? He thought as he comforted her. Danny in the meantime made his way out of the park and into an alley. There he just wanted to transform into his ghostly alter ego but couldn't. It was like his powers didn't want to come out. Once again he tried to bring his power out but it still refused. With a heavy sigh he left his power where it was and simply jumped up to the roof in one leap and continued his journey to his house over the rooftops. Once he reached the neighbor roof he jumped onto the fire escape before his window. He entered his room and fell on his bed with a tired sigh. He knew that what he did to Sam earlier was wrong but he just didn't care at the moment. He was tired and his new power made it worse. In addition to that he also gained new enemies. Enemies that no one but him could see. I've got to talk to them. I can no longer do this, he thought tired and jumped out of his bed. On his way down to the lab unfortunately he ran into his biz sister. She looked at him sternly. Danny, what were you thinking? She snapped at him. Sam and Tucker called you? He asked bored and she nodded. Listen Jazz, I have important business to attend to. Can this wait till later? He groaned and wanted to walk past her. Jazz immediately grabbed his arm and tried to stop him. Danny, we have to talk about this. Her angry look vanished and she looked concerned at her tired brother. No, we don't. This is something between the three of us, not you. If they have a problem then they should come to me, not send you. If they don't have the guts to do that then I have no time for them, he snarled as a sudden surge of anger flared through him. His sister was taken back by the evil glint in his eyes and stepped back. This was uncharacteristic for him. He was always nice and timid but now he was tired but angry and ready to pounce on everyone around him. But she is your girlfriend, Jazz tried a different approach. She's not my girlfriend anymore. We have broken over a year ago. She just thinks she has a chance with me again, he snarled with venom. Jazz took another step back and looked shocked at the new spike of anger from her brother and this new development. Sam never told me that, she thought worried. Now if you excuse me I have some business to take care of before it's too late, and with that he left his sister standing and went to the lab. Just as he opened the portal to the ghost zone a ghost emerged. It was none other but Skulker. He looked at his prey with a crazy grin. Skulker, we have to talk. It's about the competition, Danny said before the hunter ghost could make a move. The ghost's expression turned from crazy to serious. What's wrong, boy? He asked. Not here. Let's talk about this with everyone, Danny pointed out and boarded a hoverboard his parents had invented. Together the two enemies made their way into the ghost zone and towards the Thornport. While they flew Skulker called everyone together to meet them there. Half an hour later they arrived. There they were. Awaited by every ghost in the ghost zone. What's this about Baby Pop? Ember asked as she slung her arm around her man. Danny just sighed and slipped out of her grip. She pouted a bit about his cold behavior. Listen everyone, he called and everyone fell silent. I have called you here because we have to stop the competition, he continued and many negative calls came from the crowd. What are you talking about, babe? Ember hissed a bit pissed. Silence, Danny bellowed and everyone fell silent. Let me explain why we have to stop the competition, he took a deep breath. I'm losing my powers, he breathed out with a frown. What do you mean, boy? Nocturne asked curious. I mean that I have gained a new power lately which is blocking my ghost powers. Today despite my efforts I was not able to activate any of my ghost powers, the teen explained. What kind of power would that be? Spectra asked as she eyed the boy. I have no idea, but because of it I leave my body behind and have to fight monsters that are invisible to everyone else, he sighed and hung his head. Silence befell the crowd as they absorbed this information. A few of the ghosts gulped because they knew what that meant and what these monsters were. Hollows, Skulker whispered with fear. You know about them? Danny turned to the hunter ghost. They are monsters. Compared to them we are harmless puppies, he explained with a shudder. Oh great. New and stronger enemies that want to kill me and everyone else, Danny sighed again and leaned against a wall. You should stay away from them, boy. They are too dangerous. If they get to you they suck your soul out and you will become one of them, Nocturne explained with a grim expression. It's not like I want to meet them but they seek me out. At least I have figured out how to beat them, Danny laughed bitter. You found their weakness? Nocturne picked up on that. Yeah, when I destroy their masks with my sword they die, the teen shrugged with a small smile. You have a sword? Spectra asked a bit disbelieving. Yeah. Whenever I leave my body I have a silver katana with a black handle and neon green aspects. Plus I wear this black robe. A hakama I think it's called, Danny smiled. Everyone stared at him in sheer disbelief. Here was this boy. Their friend and partner in the competition on who is the strongest ghost. Telling them that he's becoming something more than a ghost. He's casually telling them that he is becoming a Shinigami. A death god. Oh, and I can transform my sword into a big but chainsaw sword, Danny smiled a bit proud. Do you even have the slightest idea what you are becoming, boy? Nocturne was the first to find his voice again. I have no clue but I know that my body can't withstand this pressure much longer, the teen shrugged tired. What do you mean, babe? Ember asked a bit nervous. I mean that my body can't handle the stress of being caught between two worlds. Being alive and dead at the same time is ripping my body apart. I don't even know if I will become a ghost after that, Danny explained to his girlfriend, still hoping for the best. So that's what you meant when you told me back then that we can't be together forever, she hung her head and leaned against him. I'm sorry, babe. At least you have a little reminder of me, he whispered and his hand caressed her belly. Nocturne cleared his throat and Danny's attention turned to the dream ghost. Sorry Nocturne, it won't happen again, he smiled sheepish. Okay, let's continue. You are becoming a Shinigami, Danny. A death god, he explained serious. So I won't become a ghost after all, Danny hung his head a bit, losing the hope to be with his girl. I'm sorry, boy, but you will become something more than us. Your purpose will be to save the souls of dead people that have not been corrupted yet and kill hollows, the dream ghost explained. So I could save you guys if I wanted to, Danny asked hopeful, but Nocturne shook his head. No, you can only save the souls of those who are still uncorrupted. No ghosts, only souls. These souls are called plus while the hollows are negatives or also minos, Spectra explained without her usual peppy tone. So can I visit you guys at least? Danny was losing too much at once. Nobody said a word and the teen knew what that meant. First his ghost powers that had a significant meaning in his life and now his friends. And all that just because he was changing into a death god. Something he never wanted. Oh, this sucks. Why can't I just become a ghost? No, I have to become something that will make me unable to meet my friends and have to fight dumb monsters, he ran a hand through his hair. Once you become a full Shinigami and get enough attention, another Shinigami will find you and take you to the Soul Society. The home of the Shinigami, Skulker explained. And what then? Danny asked unnerved. No idea. It's all we know, the hunter shrugged. Before Skulker could say more, a scanner on his arm beeped. He read the result of Danny's body scan and inhaled sharply. What's wrong, Skulker? Sydney asked worried. I just got the results from Danny's body scan, he groaned and rubbed his chin. And? Sydney pressed. With readings like that it's a wonder that he isn't already dead. I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think you will make it through the night, boy, the hunter ghost explained. Oh, this is just GRE. Wait, Danny suddenly bellowed. Everyone stared at him as if he had grown a second head. What? Ember asked as she rubbed her ears. What about Vlad and Danielle? Will they also become Shinigami? He asked unnerved. I'm not sure about Vlad, but young Danielle will become one for sure. She is your descendant after all. But Vlad's exposure to the ectoplasm during his recreation wasn't as strong as yours, so he will most likely become just a full ghost or a hollow at most, Nocturne shrugged. Oh great. How will I explain that to her? Danny groaned. Leave that to me, baby pop. I will tell her everything. I don't think you have enough time to tell her that anyway. Ember reasoned. Thanks babe, and thanks to you all for your friendship and support. I have to go now and make the best out of the remaining time I still have. Which isn't much if Skulker's scanners speak true. The teen groaned and boarded his hoverboard again. Before he shot off towards the Fenton portal, he gave his girlfriend a passionate kiss and flew home at top speed. At the city border of Amity Park, a shadowy figure with a white/green striped hat looked down on the darkening city. I guess it's time, the figure spoke and vanished with a swishing sound. Danny stepped out of the portal only to be greeted by his parents pointing their guns at him. Oh stuff it guys. I'm not in the mood right now, he sighed, a bit tired. He could feel his body giving out slowly but steady. Danny, Maddie asked and lowered her gun. What were you doing in the ghost zone without transforming? She inquired. I met up with a few friends. But let's talk about this upstairs. We have quite some talking to do. Oh, and call Jazz and the Foleys. They should also hear this. The teen groaned and motioned his father to help him upstairs. And what about Sam? She is your girlfriend's after all, Jack asked confused. We broke up over a year ago. She just hopes to get together with me again. Danny shrugged and his father accepted the answer for once. Half an hour later, the Fentons and Foleys sat in the living room staring at a pretty pale Danny. Dude. What's wrong? Tucker asked despite his anger about his friend's earlier behavior. Simple Tucker. I'm dying, the boy groaned and leaned back into the couch. What do you mean you are dying? Maddie jumped up and looked at her son with big eyes. Jazz fought hard to suppress her tears. It's as I said. I have been at the border of life and death for far too long. Cough cough, my body can't handle the stress, and now with that new power I've developed it sped up the process even more, the boy explained, and everyone stared at him in disbelief. How long? Were the only words that came over Jazz's lips. Not even the night. From what I was told I won't survive the night. Well, he began but was interrupted as a strong coughing fit hit him. His family stood by his side, rubbing his back and handing him a handkerchief. After a minute or so he finally stopped and pulled the cloth from his mouth. A gasp came from everyone. The handkerchief was covered in blood. Well, this is going faster than I thought. He tried to joke, but the pain in his eyes was visible. How can you be so calm about this? His mother cried. It's not like I can change anything about this. He tried to shrug but winced as muscles stiffened. So you will become a full ghost now? Tucker finally found his voice. No, this simple word shattered all the present's hope. What do you mean, my boy? Jack asked, wishing to find a rational explanation. It's my new power, Danny coughed. It's suppressing my ghost powers and is changing me into something different. He paused. Into what? Jazz asked, afraid for her little brother. Into a death god. A Shinigami, the teen simply stated. He suddenly jumped up with fear in his eyes. SHT, he yelled and stumbled towards the basement. Danny, what's wrong? Jazz called as she hurried after him to stop him. It's Ember. She is pregnant with my child. I have to warn her. He yelled and fought with all his remaining power get free of his sister's grip. Silence befell the room and only Danny's curses were heard. You impregnated Ember? Tucker asked in disbelief. Of course. She is my girlfriend after all. So it's normal to have a CC once or twice, Danny wailed, still hoping to break free, but suddenly his body gave in and he went limp in his sister's arms. Danny? Danny? she wailed as she felt her brother's body go limp. You are too loud, Jazz, he groaned as tried to make his body obey him once again. Suddenly a ear-splitting scream echoed through the area. But nobody except Danny reacted to it. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, he groaned. Danny, what's wrong? Maddie tried to pry her son from his sister. I have to go. I have to fight, he groaned and freed himself from his sister's grip as his body once again gave him control. What are you talking about? Your ghost sense didn't go off, Mr. Foley stated confused. No cough, not a ghost. A cough, new enemy. A enemy of my new powers, the boy coughed. Without saying anything else he gripped into his pocket and stumbled towards the door. He pulled a plastic bag with green leaves out of his pocket. Trembling he tried to open the bag but he failed, so he ripped it open, not caring that the content fell out, and gripped a leaf. Careful not to lose it, he put it in his mouth and instantly fell face first down. But what caught everyone's attention and made them stop from running towards the down boy was the blurry figure that stood behind the body. It wore a black robe with a white undergarment that reached out at the wrists and the opening over its chest. It had a katana on its waist. But what caught their breaths was that its face seemed similar to Danny's despite being blurry. Danny, Jazz barely breathed. The figure turned around and looked at them. You can see me? A low whisper was heard. Danny boy, is that you? Jack tried to wrap his chaotic mind around the situation. I'm sorry, Jack, but I'm no longer your son. He died and I remained. Daniel Jack Fenton died moments ago from self-poisoning, the blurry being said. Jazz and Maddie broke down with uncontrollable sobs while Jack just stared with a blank look. The Foleys looked crestfallen at what the boy had just said. Dude, Tucker found his voice as the figure turned to leave. What? The whispering voice asked. What should I tell Sam? He asked, hoping for some encouraging words. Like IR Tuck. She is the one living in the past. The faster she gets in her thick gothic and vegan-filled head that I'm gone the better, he stated dry and vanished with a swishing sound, leaving everyone behind. A scream echoed through the city park as a masked being was hunting down a pretty scared Star. She was running, but from what she didn't know. She heard a terrible scream and ran. Suddenly something knocked her down. She tried to scream but somehow she couldn't. The fear she felt was so immense that she forgot to breathe. The weight of the invisible force was ripped off her and she took a deep breath. Stay where you are, Star, or I can't protect you, a whispering voice stated near her. She looked around frantically and finally found a blurry figure standing between her and this evil feeling. The smaller figure stormed forward, pulling out his sword, and stormed forward without any hesitance. The evil presence also came closer and a demonic scream filled with anger and pain filled the air. That should be a warning to you not to attack young girls in my district. Wait, it's dead, so my lesson won't bring a thing, the voice rambled as it closed in her again. Star stared at the figure with big eyes and a whimper escaped her lips. Don't worry, Star. I won't hurt you. That would be counterproductive after I just saved you. The figure chuckled and offered her a hand. Surprisingly enough, she reached out and could actually touch the figure. Just as it pulled her up, it became more clearer and formed a familiar form. Fenton, she whispered, a bit afraid. You can actually see me enough to recognize me? He asked, now a bit louder. Star only nodded, not trusting her voice. Come on, I will bring you home. It's not safe to be out here right now. Danny smiled and guided her out of the park. What happened to you, Fenton? Star asked as they left the park. I died, he stated, absent-minded. What? She gasped. I killed myself just a few minutes ago since I had to come here as fast as possible, he shrugged casually. You did what? Star brought her hands to her mouth to suppress a sob that dared to escape her. Hey, it was the only option. I had to tap into my powers at the moment. If I had taken the other way, you would be dead and one of them by now, because I would have only appeared by now, he smiled down at her. For the first time she noticed that the boy she called a geek all these years was taller than her and was actually quite built. How could you do this, Danny? Why for me? She sobbed and clamped his arm. I didn't do it for you. I didn't know who was being attacked. I just knew that I had to go to protect someone, the teen shrugged. How can you be so selfless while everybody treated you like a loser? She asked, hoping to find an answer. Listen, Star. Carrying the name Phantom for 3 years has made a deep impression on my person. He shrugged and gave her a smile. What do you mean with carrying the name Phantom for 3 years? The blonde girl asked. Isn't it obvious? He asked, not really caring that he revealed his former secret identity. No really, Star shook her head. Before I died I was a normal boy. Well, as normal as one can get while having ghost powers and fighting ghosts every day. I guess now you can follow me, he explained, and her eyes went big. You were Danny Phantom, she tried to control her voice. Wasn't it obvious? Phantom. Never heard the similarity. Heck, we even looked alike. He laughed, and they finally reached her house. You stay in the house for the next few nights. I don't know enough about hollows to be sure that they won't come after you, so you should play it safe, he warned. It pushed a wisp of hair out of her face, making her blush. Thank you, Danny, and I'm sorry for how I treated you over the years, she apologized and hung her head. Don't worry about it, Star. I never blamed you for it. I have made my peace. He smiled and vanished with a swishing sound. I hope you find your peace, Danny, she muttered and went into her house. The next day came way too soon, and Danny on the branch in the park sleeping. This was his most precious place. He groaned as his eyes fluttered open and he looked around. The events of yesterday evening still fresh in mind, he jumped down and vanished before he touched the ground because he saw Sam frantically running around the park. He didn't want to take any risks of her being able to see him and then talk to him, so he ran at high speed through the air. Yeah, sounds funny. Running on thin air. It was a trick he figured out shortly after he gained his powers. It was quite a useful skill. He reappeared on top of a house near the park and watched Sam from afar. A coughing behind him caught his attention and he whirled around. So you are Mr. Fenton, a man stated with a smirk. He wore a dark green hakama with a gray overcoat that had white diamonds on the lower edge. He also had a white/green striped hat and held a beige cane in his left hand. Depends. What do you want from him? Danny asked. Oh, nothing. I'm just a friend hoping to find a young Shinigami. He giggled girlish and his face behind a fan. Danny's eyebrow rose at the comment but shrugged it off. Maybe he can really help me, the teen thought. Then I am Mr. Fenton, the teen smiled. I am Ulquiorra. Come on then. We should leave. You have some training in school to do, the man smiled and turned to leave. Danny smiled inwardly at the thought of training but frowned at the thought of school. He would become stronger and maybe he could something good with his new powers. But something still bothered him as he followed the man. Wait, Danny suddenly said as he looked towards his old home. Is something wrong? The man asked, amused. Can I visit my sister before we leave? I don't know when I will be able to see her again, Danny explained and already began to leave for his old house. Do that, young man. It's never good to leave things unsettled, he smiled and watched Danny leave. A minute later Danny stood before his sister's room window. He looked inside and saw a teary Jazz. With a soft knock on her window he had her attention. She looked to the window and saw a blurry black-clad figure. She jumped up and ran to the window, ripping it open. Danny, she yelled and hugged him. He looked at her, surprised that she could actually touch him. Where have you been? She wailed and pulled him inside the room. I've been around. You know. Fighting new enemies, saving innocent people and getting the offer for some good training, he shrugged. What do you mean training? She asked, a bit unsure. I met a fellow Shinigami and he offered me training, he explained. When will you be back? Jazz asked, hoping to meet her brother again soon. I don't know when or if I will be back. From what the other Shinigami said, it sounded like it will take quite some time. He stepped back, looking her in the face. What do you mean quite some time? She asked, not liking the tone of that. It means that he will be gone for a few decades. A new voice cut in. Both turned to the window and saw the other Shinigami crouching there. What do you mean, Mr. Urahara? Why will it take decades? Danny asked. Shinigami are technically immortal as long as we don't get killed. So our education and training takes years before you can get a chance to gain the right to return to the living world, the man explained. That means that maybe I will never see her again, Danny asked, unsure. That could happen, but I can see that you are eager and talented to learn. I have no doubt that you will shoot through the academy in under 2 years, he smiled. Then I will do it in 1, Danny cheered and pumped his fist in the air. Kisuke and Jazz chuckled at the boy's enthusiasm before Jazz slumped a bit. So I won't see you in years, she whispered, a bit broken. Don't worry, sis. I will always be with you in here, he pointed at her heart. I know, but I will still miss you, she hugged him. He hugged her back and smiled, but a lone tear rolled down his face. I'll miss you, sis. I will do my best to come back to you as fast as possible. He gave her a soft kiss on the cheek, causing her to blush. We should leave now, Mr. Fenton, Kisuke chuckled, and a round door opened before the window. Interesting, Jazz thought as the door opened, showing only light on the other side. Danny walked over to the window and stepped onto thin air. Just as the two Shinigami entered the door, Danny turned around. I will see you later, sis, and be careful not to get too caught up in our parents' madness, he called as the door closed behind him. Just before the door closed, she gave him a soft smile. The two Shinigami appeared in a white city. Every building was white. Many caught up in high walls, separating them from the outside world. Most likely private estates. So then, Mr. Fenton, we should go to the academy to enroll you, Kisuke smiled. Please call me Phantom. I used that name for quite a while now, the teen smiled. Okay then, Mr. Phantom, let's go. Kisuke walked away, closely followed by the new named Phantom. We could also run. I'm pretty fast, he smiled and vanished, only to reappear crouching on top of a wall in under a second. Kisuke stared at him a bit before he smiled like a Cheshire cat smile. Another Yoruchi. I guess I know where you will fit in after the academy, he thought. With that, the two Shinigami vanished with a swishing sound, leaving only dust. It's been 13 months since Danny had entered the Siriidii and joined the academy. And like he promised his sister, he had aced the academy in a little over a year. He was a prodigy. One of his kind. Since he already had some experience in fighting hollows and even knew his Zanpakuto's name. He sucked up the knowledge of Zenjutsu, Ho-Ho, within the first 2 months and mastered them in 1 more. Then he entered his studies of Kido and Hakuta. Kido was a hard nut to crack even for the most advanced student. The teen worked day and night on the techniques and had the Beikado spells down in 3 months. The Heido spells were down in 5. Heido felt like it was impossible for Danny to handle till he finally found a start while he was making a sketch of the city. From there on, it all was just a child's play. While Hakuta was like a second nature to him, and he mastered in 1 month. After that, he had made it his personal mission to defeat every teacher in the academy and gained respect from many captains and the vice-captains. Now we see our hero leaning against a wall right in front of Captain Commander Yamato's office and waited to be called inside. Minutes passed, and while the teen mused, I wonder what unit I will be sent to. I hope it's the 2nd squad. I just love how they work, he mused as the door opened and an unimportant nobody stepped out and called him in with his uptight expression only a stuck-up noble man could carry. Danny entered the office and kneeled before the old Captain Commander, his head bowed down. The man eyed him with his old powerful eyes. Danny glanced up carefully, hoping to read the old man's expression. Rise, Phantom, the old man's voice was gruff. Danny did as he was told and stood up to facing his leader. I have called you here to give you your recommendation for your future squad, the old man said, and handed the teen a closed letter. Danny accepted it with a slight bow and opened it. His eyes lit up and a smile grew on his face. He was placed in the second squad under Captain Cypherfics and was recommended for the seat of the lieutenant. Thank you, Captain Commander Yamato. I will do everything within my power to not disappoint you. Danny bowed deeply. Do that, young man. I see forward to your progress in the second squad, Yamato stated dry. I will take my leave now, Captain Commander. Danny bowed again. Do that. The old man dismissed him and turned back to his work. With that, Danny left the office and vanished in a shunpa before that stuck-up noble from before could open his mouth to taunt him. Danny had no nerve for this idiot right now. The two had met while he was in the academy and even then he couldn't stand the small man. Seconds later Danny reappeared in front of the second squad building. The guards eyed him a bit but didn't say anything. He passed through the gate and walked into the building. What are you doing here, boy? A stuck-up voice bellowed behind him as he passed through the corridor. He turned around and looked a tall blown-up man. He wore a standard hakama with a violet collar. The teen could smell the man's stuck-up attitude miles against the wind. I'm here to see Captain Cypherfics, for I am a new recruit for the second squad, Danny replied dry, not wanting to deal with another noble. Show respect to your betters, boy. Do you even know who I am? The man bellowed, making Danny wince at his volume. Some fat bloated guy, and by the batch on your arm, you're the man I'm to replace upon the Captain Commander's recommendation, Danny stated monotone. On the outside he may have seemed calm, but on the inside he was laughing his butt off at the man's angered face. He just loved to aggravate the man. He also felt someone watching him from the shadows. From the ryatsu he felt, he could tell that it was someone at captain level, so it had to be his new captain. Because of that he decided to play his little game a little longer and get the fat noble to fall for his trap. Obviously the current lieutenant didn't even notice the other presence near the two. How dare you? I am Marekio Omida of the Great Omida House. Now bow to me and show respect to your betters, he bellowed and tried to intimidate the teen before him. Danny just raised an eyebrow at the man's puny ryatsu. How he made it to the lieutenant rank was a mystery to the boy, so he just shrugged it off. Do you feel that? I think there is a mosquito trying to impress me before he tries to bite me. Danny smiled at his comment and could have sworn that he heard a barely suppressed laughter from the shadows. I think my future captain likes my kind of humor, he smiled. You dare! The man jumped at the teen, his hand at his Zanpakuto's handle. Danny narrowed his eyes and vanished, only to reappear behind the man, a glowing flat hand just inches away from Omida's throat. The man paled as he felt the energized hand near his throat. Like you said yourself. Respect your betters, Omida-san. Danny jumped of the man's back and stepped back. Now if you excuse me. I have to meet Captain Cypherfics in her office to give her my letter of introduction and make a hopefully good first impression. With that the boy left the shocked nobleman behind. Cypherfics smiled in the shadows and vanished in a shunpa towards her office. She sat down and waited for the boy to come to her office. Just a minute later she heard a knock. I didn't even sense him coming. I guess the Captain Commander has a good eye as always, she thought with an inner smile while she schooled her features. Come in, she called and pretended to work on a document. Danny entered the office with a small smile. His smile grew even more as he saw the appealing woman behind the desk. Captain Cypherfics was just as appealing as everyone said, and despite her strong attitude she was still a girl no matter how hard she tried to deny it. He walked up to her desk and bowed deep before he offered her the letter from Yamato. Captain Cypherfics, my name is Phantom Daniel. Captain Commander Yamato thought it would be best if I joined the second squad under your command, he explained himself and looked up as she read the letter. He could see a small smile hush over her face before his eyes caught onto something that made him smirk. Cypherfics looked up and he schooled his featured immediately. Well, I see you have quite a record since you joined the Shinigami ranks. I'm impressed, but what makes you think I would want you as my lieutenant? She inquired with a sadistic smile. At this the boy could only smile knowing she was testing him. May I speak freely? He asked and she nodded. I have all requirements for the second squad. My analytic skills are superior to many of my comrades. Plus I have met your current lieutenant and mildly spoken he is a joke. He didn't even see me move when he attacked me in the corridor. But you know that already, don't you, Captain Cypherfics? He smiled as her face twitched a bit. What makes you think that? She asked curtly, now very serious. During my talk with Omida I felt a Ryatsu source near me. It was at least at captain level, and when I entered your office I felt the same Ryatsu, he explained calm. Cypherfics rose an eyebrow, impressed that a boy fresh from the academy could sense her Ryatsu even when she was hiding it. Then I think it's time for a demonstration of your abilities against me in a spar, she stated as she stood up. Captain Cypherfics, Danny halted her before she left her desk. She turned to him and looked a bit unnerved. May I add something to my observations? He asked with a small smile. And what would that be? She asked, a bit angry as her patience ran thin. Next time you try to act as if you are working, then you shouldn't place the document upside down. He smirked as her eyes flew over to the document she pretended to work on and saw that he was right. She cursed slightly but regained her composure. Let's go, she stated and vanished in a shunpa, a grinning Danny hot on her trail. They appeared on a training field where the other members of the squad were training. Everyone stepped back as their captain appeared together with a young man. Everyone stand down. This man and I will have a spar for the seat of the lieutenant of the squad. No one will interfere. Do you understand? She bellowed. Yes ma'am, they all yelled back. Cypherfics and Danny stood opposite of each other and fell in a Hakuta stance, which surprised the young-looking captain. In a blur both opponents vanished and reappeared not a second later with their legs meeting each other in mid-kick. Then again they disappeared and reappeared just as fast, this time their arms locked in mid-strike. One arm blocking while the other in striking position. I see you have learned the Hakuta and are quite good in using it. But now let's step it up a bit. Cypherfics smiled and vanished along with Danny. Now everyone could only see, or more for that fact, hear the strikes between the two while the opponents stayed invisible due to their speed. Minutes passed and finally both reappeared. Everyone stared at them in awe. Cypherfics' leg was in an axe kick upon Danny's right shoulder while Danny's hands were held together at the wrists ready for a flat hand strike against her stomach. From the sight of it they both had stopped just before they finished their lethal strikes and reached a tie. Both loosened their stances and stepped apart. She gave the teen an actual smile. You are good, Daniel-san, she stated, proud to have such a promising man join her squad. I appreciate your compliment, Captain Cypherfics, he smiled and bowed slightly. You are really worthy of the rank lieutenant. Now where did that fat idiot run off to? She stated, proud while she mumbled the last part. If you are looking for Omida-san, his Ryatsu signature just left the squad grounds during our spar. But if you are looking for him because of his badge, then you shouldn't worry about it, Captain. Danny smiled as he pulled said badge from his pocket. Cypherfics eyed him surprised. She hadn't even noticed that he took the badge from Omida when they met in the hall. You are quite skilled, Daniel. I'm impressed, she smiled. You may hold on to it, she smiled and turned to leave. Danny wrapped the badge around his left upper arm and smiled, proud. I will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp in my office. Don't be late, Danny's new captain ordered. Yes ma'am, Danny said, proud, and gave a small bow as she vanished in a shunpa. He then turned to everyone that was staring at him in awe. If you have time to gawk, then return to your training. There is no use in wasting good training time, Danny ordered with confidence, and the people hurried to follow their new lieutenant's order. Now that's more like it, he thought with a smile, and watched the members of Squad 2 train. To his surprise he saw a few flaws in their movements. Not many, but they were there. He made a mental note to inform Cypherfics-san of this. Immediately after he left the squad grounds he went to a bar to meet up with a friend of his. Renji Abarai sat in his usual seat and Danny took his place beside him like usual. Hey there, kiddo. And what squad did get sent to? The redhead greeted his friend. Hey girly redhead. Why do you want to know? Danny answered with his usual nickname for his friends. Oh, just so I can send I'm sorry for your new burden bouquet, Renji laughed. Very funny, but I wouldn't be so sure. Danny smiled as he showed the badge on his left arm. The redhead's eyes widened at that. He couldn't believe that this young fresh out of the academy boy already had the lieutenant rank. Heck, he was lieutenant of the second squad under Captain Soifon. The man-hating Soifon. How, he stuttered. I'm just that good. Danny smiled and ordered a bottle of sake for the two of them. Seriously man. How did you do that? Soifon is one of the biggest man-haters ever. You can't be her lieutenant. Renji leaned to his friend and hissed. Hey, she acknowledged my skills and we even reached a tie in a pure Hakuda match. The teen smiled as the bottles came up. He thanked the man and placed the sake cups before the two of them and poured them a drink. He took a sip of his cups and turned to his friend. Danny had to suppress a laughter at his friend's shell-shocked expression. Without a care in the world, the teen drank his sake and enjoyed the silence. Half an hour later, the tall redhead finally snapped out of it and asked countless questions. The two passed the evening with many answered questions and even more new questions for Renji. How could this boy melt the iceberg called Soifon in such a short time? Only Yoruchi-san was able to do that. Soifon has never opened up to anyone but her, he thought amazed. Now my friend, I will take my leave. I have to work early tomorrow, Danny stated and stood up stretching his back. Do that boy and keep up the good work. Renji smiled at his friend and Danny left. Minutes passed until Renji realized something. Danny hadn't paid for the drinks. Again. DMNU phantom, he cursed and reached for his money only to find it gone. The man began to sweat as he met the eyes of the owner and cursed under his breath. I will kick your butt for that boy, he cursed and tried to find a way out of this situation. Danny lay on his bed in his apartment and stared at the ceiling. She is just as appealing as I remember her, he thought as his mind drifted a few months back. Flashback. Danny sat under a tree meditating. He had once again failed in activating Hado spell. Now he hoped by clearing his mind that he would find a way to get a grip on these DMN spells. Suddenly something shot past him. His eyes shot open and he turned to the side to see what had ran past him. And there he saw it. A slender figure in a very revealing hakama, performing the most appealing version of Hakuda he had ever seen. She sprung around performing kicks and hits like it was some sort of dance. Danny could only stare in awe as she left the clearing after a drop kick in a shunpa. Flashback end. From that day on he had set himself the goal to be her equal. To perform Hakuda just as appealing and deadly as she did. And he did. He mastered Hakuda faster than anyone before. With that thought in mind he turned around and fell asleep with a smile. It's been 5 months since Danny had joined the second squad. In this time he had made quite a few changes in the squad. To his surprise his captain had given him very much room to operate and that he did. The day after he had joined the squad he had called everyone together for a strategic meeting. Flashback. Everyone front and center, Danny bellowed and seconds later everyone stood straight before him. At ease, he smiled and everyone relaxed. I know I'm new here but I know that my reputation from the academy has already reached your ears since I heard you talking about it, he stated firm and smirked as he saw some of his men begin to sweat. So I will make this easy for you. Since the second squad doesn't have much to do at the moment I have a new assignment for you all, he paused till he knew that everyone was looking at him. Each of you will develop your own Hakuda style, Danny grinned as everyone gasped. I know you have many questions so let me explain. From observing you I have figured that this squad only relies on the style used by Shioin-sama and there lays your very weak spot, he stated firm and crossed his arms before his chest. A member lifted his arm and Danny nodded. Sir, what do you mean by weakness? The woman asked. Simple. From my observation of your style, it's obvious that the style is incomplete. He paused to let this sink in. I believe that Shion-sama created this special style with a goal in mind. Can anyone guess what this goal could be? He shouted, making everyone stiffen. Sir, I don't think, a man began, only to interrupted by a woman to his side. I think so that we are weakened and not only rely on Hakuda, she stated, proud. No, so that we would stand no chance should we ever face her, another shouted. This went on for a few minutes till Danny had enough. Silence, he bellowed and released a spike of Ryatsu. Everyone shut up immediately and stared at their lieutenant. You are all wrong, he rubbed the bridge of his nose and sighed. I have studied the history of Shion-sama during my Hakuda training and came to much more simpler conclusion. Why would she try to weaken our forces? At that time she was a loyal member of the Gotei 13. The reason for the weaknesses and openings in the style is simple. She wanted each user to develop their own style with hers as a basis. The teen sighed again and looked at his frozen subordinates. So my order for you is to create your own style to finish what Shion-sama started. You can work in groups. You have 1 month. Now begin, he ordered serious, and everyone scampered to follow his order. Half an hour passed till the first began to test new ideas and tried to integrate them in their own style. Danny just smiled and went to his own training. Flashback end. The boy was quite happy about the results because not even did they manage to create their own styles but taught it to each other and mastered all of them. Though despite the squad's sudden increase of strength they still didn't stand a chance against his own style. He had tried to teach them but none of them were as flexible as he beside the captain, and she was too proud to ask for help. She even called him to her office after the squad had survived his evaluation of their new skills. Flashback. Danny stood straight before his captain as she eyed him from behind her desk. Do you know why you were called here, Phantom-san? She asked, serious. Yes, I believe I have an idea, Captain, Danny stated, firm. Then explain yourself, she stated. I simply found a weakness in the local Hakuda style and pointed it out in a report I gave you before I gave the order for the squad to develop their own style based on Shion-sama's style. They had 1 month time and they actually managed to create 5 new styles derived from the basic style. With these styles the squad's capabilities in close combat have been improved by 31%. All of this is also written in my report I have given to you when I entered, he explained, serious, while she browsed through said report. So what made you think you simply give such a order? She asked, stern. As your new lieutenant I thought it to be my responsibility to take work of your back. The team training costs you each day at least 3 hours. I believe that you could use this time more wisely to rest, for example. Danny was now sure that she was trying to find out something. Care to explain why I should rest? She asked sweetly. Danny gulped mentally, knowing that she was like a bomb now. Not to invade your privacy, Captain Soifan, but I know that you stay in the office for an ungodly amount of time. On my first night in this squad I felt your Ryatsu not leave the room till morning and then only to get some tea. Then for the duration of the squad's training you always worked till late in the night. It can't be good for your body to work yourself in the ground like this. I am merely concerned about your health, Captain, the lieutenant explained, serious, not wanting her to overexert herself anymore. She just wanted to retort as a yawn escaped her lips instead of her answer. A slight blush hushed over her cheeks as she tried to regain her composure. Please, Captain. I beg you. Take the rest of the day off and rest. You look like the walking death. Danny slowly walked around the desk as she began to sway a bit and her eyelids began to fall. No, I have to work, she slurred till she fell forward. Before she could crash on her desk he caught her from the side with an arm around her midriff and the other on her shoulder. Careful not to stir her from he barely gained sleep, he lifted her up bridal style and brought her to a couch in the room corner. There he set her down and placing her head on a soft cushion while using her captain cloak as a blanket. With a short smile he vanished in a shunpa only to reappear minutes later with company. Beside him stood Unohana Retsu. She looked down at the sleeping form of Soifon. So her body finally gave in, she asked herself and gave her a fast checkup. Yeah. She has been driving herself way too hard since I took the training of her hand. Danny sighed and walked over to the desk. So you will take on her paperwork as well? Retsu smiled. Only for the moment. For me paperwork is the greatest fiend I know of, but if it is for my captain, I'm willing to take on this accursed enemy. Danny smiled sarcastic. You really have fallen hard for her boy, huh? The captain asked offhandedly. Danny nearly ripped a document he held in his hands apart at her words. WH. What was that Uno, Hana-san? He sputtered. She only smiled and left the office. Danny took a deep breath and fell into the chair before he began his work. Flashback end. Danny shook his head and concentrated on the task at hand. Suifeng had asked him to take over for her today because she wanted to take a day off. He had accepted without thinking. I guess Retsu-san was right after all. But at least she finally seems to rely on me more. Heck, she even offered my first name basis. He smiled inwardly but groaned as a man came in with a new pile of documents. His mind wandered back to when he met one of his new friends and he finally found a way to communicate with his family and friends. Flashback. Danny shot over the roofs trying to distinguish the different Ryatsu sources all around him, hoping to find these Ryoka that had invaded the Siriidii. Finally he found a new source. A strong one. At least low captain level he was right. Silently he dropped to the street below him. There he leaned against a wall and waited for his target to round the corner while he suppressed his own Ryatsu. Just a minute later a tall teen with short orange hair rounded the corner and gasped as he saw the teen leaning against the wall. The taller teen pulled out his giant sword and Danny whistled. Interesting sword you have there, man. I've never seen such a Zanpakuto. He smiled at the orange-haired boy's expression. How about we have a little talk? Danny suggested, only for the teen to attack him. With a fast sidestep he evaded the attack. He has way too many openings, the lieutenant sighed. Can't we just talk this out? He asked again, only to be greeted with a scowling teen. The teen lunged forward only to be evaded again. Come on, you want to rescue Rukia with that kind of skill? Danny taunted, but with an underlying tone of threat. That made the teen actually stop and look at Danny. Who are you? He finally spoke. Name's Phantom Daniel, lieutenant of the 2nd Squad. Danny introduced himself with a slight bow. But before he continued he whispered. Freeze everything, Phantasma. With a flash of light everything around the two seemed to have stopped, and at Danny's waist hung a rolled-up blade WHP instead of his katana. The tall teen looked around before he turned to the lieutenant before him. What did you do? He demanded to know. I merely stopped time for us. Right now we are outside the time stream. Here we can talk without any interruption and without me getting in trouble for helping a Ryoka, Danny explained. The Ryoka stared at him in disbelief, but he shrugged it off pretty fast. Interesting ability, kid, he smiled. Danny frowned at this. Just so you know it, I'm 18 even if I look younger, Danny stated firm, only for the Ryoka stare at him confused. So what's your name? Danny sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Kurosaki Ichigo. Say, how do you know of Rukia? He asked. I'm a friend of her. Much like the redhead that you met in the human world. As he took her back, Danny explained, and Ichigo growled at that. If you are her friend, then why won't you help her? Ichigo demanded, angry. Now it was Danny's turn to get angry. You think I don't want to? Of course I want to save my friend, but I can't. My hands are tied just like Rinji's. We doing everything we can in order to save her. In fact, I arranged it so that there were no members of my squad near her cell when your invasion started. More than that would cost me my position as a lieutenant and I would be executed myself, Danny yelled, pissed off at the Ryoka's attitude. But, Ichigo began, a bit confused. Unlike you, I have no place to run to. In the living world I died over a year ago. I have no other place than here. Danny began to control his anger. Ichigo stayed silent and stared at Danny. Look. I'm sorry for yelling at you, Danny sighed before he continued. You better get going. Timeout only holds for 20 minutes if you are further away from me. So use the time to get to Rukia. With that the lieutenant turned his back to Ichigo who stared at him confused. I wonder where that Ryoka could be, he mused out loud and Ichigo understood. Thanks man. I won't forget this, Ichigo thanked him. Don't thank me. Save Rukia instead, Danny smiled over his shoulder and walked away before he vanished in a Shuinpa. With that Ichigo and Danny went their separate ways. The invasion was over and Aizen had betrayed the Soul Society. Danny kneeled behind Suifoam with his head bowed. Before them stood Yoruchi Shioin with a big smile while Suifoam looked almost timid in her presence. You have really gotten strong my little bee, Yoruchi smiled at the girl and patted her head only to make her blush and Danny smiled. And you have found yourself a good man, she taunted with an evil smile. The two members of the second squad began to glow from embarrassment while Suifoam tried to form reasonable sentence. No. No. Yorui, Chi-sama, he is, only, a friend, no. She trailed off into unintelligible muttering. While she did that and Yoruchi laughed, Danny regained his composure and stood up to look at the tall woman. Shioin-san, can I ask you a favor? He asked, getting her attention while Suifoam began to press her index fingers together while still muttering. What can I do for you boy? Yoruchi smiled seductively, which had no effect since his heart belonged to someone else. I just wanted to ask if you could send this to my sister if you return to the living realm, he stated as he reached into his hakama and pulled a letter out. Yoruchi eyed the piece of paper before she looked up at him. I can't leave the Siriidii for the moment. But I promised my sister that I would try to visit her as fast as possible. Since I can't do that I wanted to send her a letter which is also impossible from here, he explained before the woman snatched the letter from his hand and put it in her pocket. Don't worry boy, as a thanks for helping my little bee I will send it for you, she smiled before she leaned forward and whispered something to Suifoam that he couldn't hear. You better claim him soon my dear or someone else will do it instead, she whispered, making the poor captain light up like a Christmas tree. See you later boy and look out for my little bee, with a mock salute she vanished. Oh boy, I have a bad feeling about asking her for help. I should have asked Ichigo instead, Danny sighed. Flashback end. While he remembered this event and the answer he got 2 weeks later from his sister, he had rushed through most of the paperwork. Jazz was happy to hear from him again, and in fact she was able to move on with her life. Sadly it seemed like his parents hadn't. She had told him that as soon as she told them about his letter they began to inspect it to find a way to open a portal to the Siriidii. They were hellbent on getting him back. Stubborn idiots. Why can't you just move on, he sighed. Also it seemed that his and Ember's daughter didn't get his Shinigami tendency, which he was happy and sad for. Happy that she wouldn't be forced into this kind of life and that she could be with her mother. But sad that he could never be with her. Tucker also had moved on and was now a couple with Valerie, and they were quite happy from what Jazz told him. Also there was Sam. Sadly she didn't move on and was just as obsessed as his parents on getting him back. Like this the hours passed and he finished the paperwork. He entered the training field for team training but was stopped when a messenger appeared telling him that he was summoned to a captain meeting since Captain Soifon was on her day off. Danny gave the squad instructions and left for the meeting. When he entered the room everyone stared at him confused except for the Captain Commander Yamato. Ah, Phantom-san. Now we can begin, he stated in his grandfather-like tone. Why are you here and where is Captain Soifon? Captain Hitsugaya asked with a frown. Captain Soifon has a day off and asked me to take her place for the moment, Danny explained, calm, not wanting to start a fight with the kid. So let's get on with this meeting. Yamato got everyone's attention once again and nodded for Kuratsuchi Mayuri to make his report. We have gotten reports of a new Shinigami being sighted in the living realm. It seems to be a young girl with white hair, Mayuri explained with his usual crazy look. That information made Danny freeze up. Where? He asked silently, making the crazy scientist look at him. What was that boy? He taunted. Where was she sighted? He asked louder this time. Near a town called Amity Park, America. Why do you ask? The man intrigued. Isn't Amity Park where? Yukitake wondered but was interrupted as Danny fell to one knee and bowed his head. Please, Captain Commander Yamato. Let me be the one to get this new Shinigami, he stated firm, but the pleading in his voice was audible. And why would you want to go there? The old man asked, already having a hunch. This new Shinigami could be my. Danny paused and collected himself. She could be my daughter, he voiced, and everyone fell silent and stared at the teen. What do you mean your daughter? Hitsugaya asked, unnerved. I mean that she was created from my DNA, even if it was without my consent, so she is my daughter. You got a problem with that kid? Danny growled as he threw the captain an angry look. His tone actually stopped any answer from said captain, though he looked pissed at being called kid. Yamato coughed and got their attention. So you want to meet your daughter again? He asked calm. Yes, Captain Commander. She is important to me since she and my sister are the last of my family that I can trust, Danny stated firm with his head bowed. What do you mean you can't trust your family? They are alive, right? Yukitake asked, confused. After the Ryoka incident, I asked Yoruchi-san a favor to deliver a letter to my sister. She did so and later I got an answer through her, the lieutenant explained while he pulled out a letter from his hakama and handed it to Yukitake. The man read it and reached it to the next. For the next minute silence reigned in the room while the captains read the letter. When the letter reached Captain Commander, he read it over and folded it back together. He had a thoughtful expression on his face. So you have letter contact with your real sister, he stated, calm but seemingly cold. Yes, Captain Commander. I know I shouldn't, but I needed the reassurance that she is alive and well. Due to my long presence around her, she is protected from lower hollows up till Minos, but I just need to hear from her in order to have my peace, Danny explained with his head bowed. I understand, Yamato paused. But you shouldn't contact the living world behind our backs, he looked stern. Next time you do it, use the official way, he finished, and everyone stared at his slight smile in shock. Did the Captain Commander just make an exception? Everyone thought, confused. I will, Captain Commander, Danny bowed deeper. Then you should prepare yourself. I will send you together with a retrieval team. You will be in charge, Yamato ordered, and everyone nodded. Thank you, Captain Commander, Danny bowed and stood up to leave. Boy, Yamato called before the teen could leave. Yes, Captain Commander, Danny turned around. Don't embarrass the Siriidii out there, he stated stern. Danny nodded with a smile. I will, Captain Commander. Danny left the stunned group behind. Danny flashed to his apartment and picked up his shoulder bag. He packed a few documents and left. Outside he was met by 3 members of the second squad. Sir, we are the retrieval team sent to help you, a tall man stated firm. Good, then come, the lieutenant stated and pulled out his zanpakuto. He held it forward and a gate appeared out of nowhere. He turned his sword like a key and the gate opened. The 4 stepped through and the gate closed behind them. A white-haired girl sat in a tree and was bored out of her mind. I wish Dad was here to play with me, she thought, a bit sad. She had heard the news shortly after it happened because she came over just a few days later to visit him again. Ever since then she felt alone if she wasn't with Jazz or Ember and her later-born child. She also had some contact with Tucker but none with Sam or her grandparents. They were too crazy for her to handle, even worse than the Fruit Loop. Speaking of him, she hadn't seen him in months. Something must have happened. A sudden monstrous cry snapped her out of her bored thoughts. Okay, here we go again, she sighed. It wasn't that she hated it to fight monsters, but it was sad that no one except Jazz and some ghosts could see her. She hurried to the place where she heard the monster. When she reached it, she gasped. Before her stood a giant clad in black with a completely white mask. "Oh, she muttered shocked. "Language young lady," a new voice stated behind her. She whirled around and saw how 4 people emerged from a door that hung in mid-air. The front man was a tall teen around 6 feet with white hair and ice blue eyes. He wore the same outfit she did. The 3 behind him were clothed like ninja with their faces covered. "Daddy?" she asked as she eyed the teen. "Well, hello there, my little girl. How have you been?" he asked with a smile. She just stood there shell-shocked. There before her was her daddy who had vanished from the face of earth quite a while ago. Danny passed her and ruffled her hair, making her pout. "Keep her safe," he ordered to the 3 men who only nodded and surrounded her. They created a circle around her with their backs to her to observe the area. Danny in the meantime looked how Danny faced the giant monster. "Please stay safe, Daddy," she whispered. "You shouldn't worry about the lieutenant. He is stronger than this Minos," one of the men stated calm. "Who are you people?" she asked the man. "We are members of the 2nd Squad of the Cypherfics under Captain Cypherfics and Lieutenant Phantom. We were sent here to find you," he stated calm. "Why me?" she inquired while she watched how Danny jumped up to the Minos face and attacked it with a wave of green energy from his sword. "You are a Shinigami and you should be brought to the Cypherfics. The lieutenant asked to be the one to retrieve you right after he heard of your appearance," he explained as he watched the Minos disappeared with its mask destroyed. Danielle just nodded and looked in awe how her daddy floated downwards. He landed and turned to her with a soft smile. "Hey there, Danny," he waved. She took that moment to break out of her protection and jumped at him, giving him a fierce hug. "Daddy," she yelled and snuggled against his chest. Danny hugged her back and stroked her back. The men chuckled and the teen threw them a glare. "How about we go now?" he asked his little girl. "Where to?" Danny asked, confused but never breaking the hug. "The Cypherfics. The home of the Shinigami," the young father smiled. Danny just nodded, falling asleep in her father's arms. Danny just smiled and picked her up bridal style. "Let's go. We have what we came for," he stated, and one of his men opened a gate. With that the team left the living world once again. Danny began to wake up from a blissful dream and tried to focus her surrounding. From the many shelves she saw, she assumed that she was in some kind of office. The sound of scribbling drew her attention and she turned her head. There on a desk sat Danny working on a mountain of documents. "I can't believe that Swayphone managed to convince me to do this again. I'm way too good-hearted with her, then it's good for me," he muttered as he finished up another document. Danielle stayed silent and watched him work till the door opened and a short woman walked in. "Danny," she greeted. "Swayphone? What brings you here?" "I thought you wanted the day off," Danny asked, surprised. "Oh, I heard about your little expedition you took in my place and the reason for it," she smiled and looked towards the seemingly to be sleeping girl. She had changed quite a bit since Danny joined her squad and opened up a bit. She smiled a bit as she noticed that Danielle was awake but didn't say anything about it. "Yeah. I'm sorry that I acted on my own, but I had to get my daughter. She wasn't safe in the living world and I wanted her by my side." Danny sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose as he leaned back in the chair. "I understand. Family is important after all," she stated, firm but still with a smile. "So. I guess the other captains have informed you about her, right?" he asked, a bit worried. "That she was created without your consent?" "Yes. That you see her just like your very one daughter?" "Yes, and I think that's good," Swayphone smiled. She then threw a look at the documents on the desk and smiled. "Hard work, Lieutenant," she teased. "You know it, Captain." "I'm just happy that I'm finished for today," Danny eyed his captain curious. "You are never finished if you want to be a captain one day," she smiled. "I know, but I still hate paperwork," he sighed and walked to the couch where his daughter slept. Swayphone gave a for her uncharacteristic giggle and Danny smiled even more. You should smile more often, Suifeng, he stated with a teasing smile. Are you flirting with me, Lieutenant? She asked, serious, but the teasing undertone was audible. Danny smiled at this. A smile which Danny caught but didn't comment. Why would I do that? Danny asked, innocent. Good. It's better if you don't, she stated, serious but with a sad expression. I don't think so. Danny suddenly stood before her and wrapped his arms around her. She stiffened in his embrace but didn't say anything. He pulled her closer into the comfort of his calm aura. He had got it when he became a Halfa, and it stayed with him beyond his death. Slowly she began to relax in his arms and sighed. It was strange for her. She hadn't allowed any human contact since the supposed betrayal of Yoruchi. But now this young man, her lieutenant, was embracing her. Giving her a warmth she hadn't felt for so long. A warmth she missed. Hesitantly she wrapped her arms around his back. Danny smiled as he felt her return the embrace. Dad finally found me a mom, Danny smiled. Suifeng caught herself again and stepped out of his embrace with a deep crimson blush. I should go, take my day off, she stuttered and hurried out of her office. Danny only shook his head and smiled sadly. So how long do you plan to spy on me, Danny? He asked nonchalant as he walked over to a window facing the training ground with his arms crossed behind his back. How long did you know that I was awake? She asked as she sat up with a smile. While working on the documents, but I was sure when I was complimenting Suifeng and you smiled, he stated without turning around. So where are we? The girl sighed for not being able to get a reaction from her dad. We are in the HQ of 2nd Squad in the Siriidii, he answered calm and turned to her with a warm smile. The what? Danny was confused. The stealth force, Danny explained calm, but a small smile tugged at his lips. So, you are spies? Danny asked after thinking for a few seconds. Technically yes, but we prefer the term information gatherer, the lieutenant shrugged. So you and this Suifeng? She asked while making a heart sign with her fingers. That's Captain Suifeng for you, little lady, and no. I want her to open up more, and I'm finally getting her to open up and rely on me. But I also like her, yes. Yet I can't tell her that. She is too wounded from her past, and before these wounds don't heal I can't allow myself to confront her. He sighed and his eyes were slightly teary. Danny just stared at him also with a few tears in her eyes. She walked up to him and gave him a hug which he answered with his own. They broke the small family moment and both of them smiled. Thanks, Danny, he smiled and wiped away his tears. For you always, Daddy, she smiled. Now, since when do you call me Daddy anyway? He suddenly teased his girl. The girl blushed crimson red and stared at the ground. She tried to organize her mind. Don't worry about it, baby. I like it and I want my daughter to call me Dad anyway, he smiled and ruffled her hair. Danielle only pouted for a moment but then smiled brightly. Unknown to both of them, a slightly sobbing Suifeng stood before the door and listened in on them. She never would have allowed herself to open up to someone, but Danny's late efforts and his words broke her mental walls over her emotions. She knew that he only meant to help her, but she wasn't ready yet. She was thankful that he wanted to give her time. She wanted to return his feelings, but she couldn't, not yet anyway. With that she vanished in a Shuanpa, making Danny notice the Ryatsu spike outside the room. I think she heard us. I just hope that she will be able to trust others in time, he thought with a slight smile, getting a confused look from Danny. What's wrong, Danny? She asked. Oh, nothing. I thought I heard something, he shrugged. Must have been the wind. Danny just shrugged and looked around when her stomach growled. She blushed a bit. Come on. Let's get you something to eat. Danny walked to the door with her right behind him. I just hope you like Japanese food. He received a small shudder from his daughter. Don't worry. You will like it. I know this perfect chef. He makes the best sushi you have ever tasted, he smiled. Danielle just sighed and followed him. The two sat in a restaurant and ate their sushi. To her surprise, she actually liked it. Danielle devoured her food like a vacuum cleaner. Told ya, Danny snickered. She threw him a silent glare and returned to her food. Danny just smiled and turned to the chef. I told her she would love your cooking, but she didn't believe me. He shrugged at the chef's surprised expression. Ah. So that's it. A disbeliever. Well, at least she is converted now, he laughed hearty. Danny just grumbled but continued to stuff more food into herself. The two men just laughed more and each drank their sake. Suifeng lay in her bed and sobbed silently into her cushion. Just why can't I love him? No. I love him, but why can't I show it? Why? She whispered as more tears ran down her cheeks. She tried to clear her mind, but whenever she did it, more pictures of Danny appeared. It was like very presence had seeped into her. As if he was a part of her life for a long time now. He once had explained that he had a soothing aura, he had gained before his death. Maybe that was the reason, but she couldn't be sure. You shouldn't be so hard to yourself. You have worked so hard to build up your defenses against everything and everyone after Yoruchi left. So it isn't strange that you have a hard time connecting to someone. Danny is good for you, Suifeng. Just let him in, Suzumabachi encouraged her from inside her mind. You may be right, Suifeng sighed as she tried to get her act together. With that she steeled her resolve, which wasn't really easy. Suzumabachi sighed as she watched her wielder trying to get her act together. This is going to be a hard piece of work, the little bee sighed. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author HauntedScythe on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.